Okay, can you see that logo? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, welcome. So
I'm Aiden LaRue. I'm the Assistant Director of Odyssey Works and one of the co-founders of this Experience Design Certificate Program.
I'm Abraham Bjerksen. I'm also the co-founder of the Odyssey Works and of the Experience Design Certificate Program. That's it. So, oops, let's get this working. Welcome to the info session. That's Aiden. Not just in the Zoom screen. That's me. That's a pony in Iceland. That was a really nice time. So it was about 21 years ago now that Odyssey Works started creating large-scale transformative experiences for very small audiences. Some of you know about this. If you don't, this is new. The project was actually ultimately a laboratory for the development of experience design principles, and from the very beginning, it was fundamentally interdisciplinary. We created day-long, week-long, months-long experiences for one-person audiences, and those experiences we discovered were life-changing for people. When we started, experience design wasn't really a thing, and it was really hard to actually talk about what it was that we were doing. And then after, I guess, 15 years of research, we wrote this book, which tried to look at the way that our work informed other work, that our work was an experience design laboratory. That came out from Princeton Architectural Press in 2016. But we also have had other projects and other modes of research. There's the Long Architecture Project, which is an experience design based architecture practice. There are other experiences we've created, like the Book of Separation, which was a transmedia video customized experience for 2 people at a time that was built for the pandemic. And we've continued practicing experience design in various forms, especially in education, since then. And over the past 6-7 years, we've had thousands of students in our programs. We've had workshops, masterclass, the experience design incubator, and of course the experience design certificate program. We've worked with folks from more fields than we care to list, from immersive theater to marketing, from architecture to education, graphic design, cybersecurity. We work with scientists, we work with museum people, we work with theater people, we work with social designers. The list is broad, and it's intentionally broad because it's central to experience design as we see it.
And so basically, in case you need just like a refresh on how we would define experience design, experience design is this methodology in which the final product that you're designing for is the experience of the user or an audience, rather than, say, a discrete thing like a chair. So basically, there are so many disciplines that Abe was talking about, and you see the list here of the kinds of people who I think initially were really gathering some of the seeds of what experience design is, and each of them were working with their different kinds of vocabularies. But you can see here we've got immersive theater makers, experiential marketers, installation artists. They're often going to think of themselves as experience designers, but they can also be found in a lot of other places that are, from installation art to edtech, from HR to religious practitioners, right? A lot of ritual design is very much centered and rooted in experience design. People who are working in social design or political activism. Experience design is really just this practice of placing something emotional, the feeling, the affective at the center of what you're designing for, rather than that material. So a traditional design process is going to be complete when the thing is made, and experience design really comes to life in that lived subjective experience of the audience. So if you're one of the people who really wants to think this way, away from fixed disciplines or towards a space of impact, then this is really going to be the right place for you. And I can already see among the faces here and some of the folks that I know and I'm familiar with your work, there's such a breadth of wisdom and practices and traditional kinds of training that all of you have that are feeding into this. So we're really looking for people who are good at what they do, who have a honed discipline or craft, probably like early or mid-career. You're someone who is passionate about making, and you maybe feel a little bit like the field that you work in, some of you could be functioning in a different way, let's say. So we're looking for folks who are hardworking and who are disciplined, who maybe want to explore and find a new community of like-minded individuals. That's what we've really seen in the current cohort. In our first year, we have just so many people who are really looking to connect with people who are like-minded individuals that are thinking in this way that feels really radical, and it can be hard to connect with a community of people who are interested in reworking how you approach what you do. So you might be a graphic designer or an architect or an urban planner wanting to begin with the effect of your work rather than with a sort of design brief, or maybe you're in VR or immersive and you want to offer more than something that's just spectacle. I've seen so many people who come our way who feel a little bit like those fields are just for show. Maybe you're a community maker and you want to begin a process from the experience of that community, or you're a teacher, or you work in marketing, or you work in museum design and exhibition design, and you already consider yourself an experienced designer, but maybe you want to go deeper or connect with more people who can push the way you're thinking about that. We really want to build a diverse cohort of individuals. And for those of you who've maybe already taken a look at the website, you can see the current roster of students, and it is a really incredibly diverse group of people from across the country, also in the UK and Canada, and they're all working together with this common aim of designing experiences rather than things. We're about 2/3 of the way through that first cohort, and they're just brilliant. So we thought it might be helpful to hear a little bit from them. These are just a handful of the 14 people in our cohort. The video is about 6 minutes long, so we'll just play this and you'll get a sense of some of them right now.
I realized I didn't share the sound, so I'm going to stop the share, reshare. Hold on.
Everything is experience design. It's blowing my mind.
Can you hear okay?
Experience design to me is a method of opening up thinking about what you want to create for an audience or a user or a participant. So if you're thinking, here's what I want someone to feel, here's what I want someone to experience, and then working backward from there in a kind of discipline agnostic way.
I felt like this approach to creating your art with a sense of empathy for the people experiencing it was really going to help make the changes that were necessary.
I was really interested in the certificate program because of the lens of empathy. I was also really attracted to applying experience design in other disciplines as well. So I was pretty interested in the interdisciplinary aspect of being able to meet people who work in different areas, be it gaming or tech or design, and sort of bringing us all together. And that's been very exciting and rewarding.
This is not UX, this is not XD. This is artists and designers and community leaders and makers in diverse disciplines who want to learn how to create the experience rather than just the thing.
It's low residency, but it's absolutely about community. And we built the program that way because to design the experience of another, you have to be in relationship and you have to begin with empathy.
Experience design is not some proprietary practice in a specific field, it's a way of making. making immersive theater or architecture or lesson plans or museum exhibits, families, religions, anything really. It's a way of making in which you start with the experience you wish to create and work backwards from there.
Odyssey Works has spent more than 2 decades designing transformative experiences, and learning itself is a transformative experience. So the program is just 10 months and it's intense, and it has to be intense if we're going to change the way that things are done.
My favorite kind of part of the toolkit that I've taken so far is just the different ways of looking at phase 0 of an experience, thinking about something first from what do I want my audience to experience, and therefore what am I going to get, the different ways of looking at world building, the different ways of looking at narratives, so sort of just the process. And then I would also say, related to the idea of like iterating quickly, just the idea of like, let me try out a tool and see if it's going to work. So let me check out if Twine, which I had never used before, is going to like do something useful for me.
There are structures and rules, but we can also break them creatively.
Since joining, my mind has just been like vastly, like I've exploded with so many ideas and so many tools and different and new vocabulary that I've learned.
And I've had more vocabulary to, and like a bigger set of a toolkit to play with. I've got to meet incredible like-minded creatives.
And what is our experiential aim? What are we really getting at here?
I mean, it's something that is so expansive, and the composition of the group that they've put together, I think, is great because everybody sort of complements each other very well. There are places where you can go, you know, this for this thing, let me check and see what so and so has to say, you know, that because that's kind of where they live. And
what originally interested me in the certificate was the opportunity to have some structure around exploring experience design, to have these little assignments that you have to create fairly quickly. The cohort that's people with very different artistic backgrounds or just backgrounds of different kinds of practices coming together. It's been really wonderful to see people's different processes, the way people work.
Was really to tap into this international community of experience design developers and kind of learn about what people are doing in other places and to make those connections and build those relationships.
People about their worlds and their creative lives and other things that they're experienced. I felt that I was able to realize through this program, but I'm also able to realize it through my work as an educator, administrator, community organizer. The idea of empathy, to have a sensitivity and a respect for what it means to them, very personally and professionally.
I would recommend it to anybody who's actually interested in working and creating for the live interactive industry.
I would recommend this program for anyone who is looking to kind of be shaken out of your normal way of thinking and to open up your process, whatever area that's in, to different tools, different perspectives, a way of looking at what you create that is very centered on the impact that it's going to have on the audience member or the user or the participant.
There's so much richness in this experience design program that can just be applied to so many different career paths and concepts. Everything is experienced.
All right, can you hear me again? Yeah, okay. So that was just some of our students. Some of those, I know the sound on some of those interviews wasn't perfect, but it gives you a taste of where we're at. So we just wanted to show you the practicalities of this program. It's a hybrid program, and it has it has 3 essential parts to it. There's the first session, the summer session, and the final session, the accelerator, which is all about gaining concepts, the research session, which is lived research we'll talk about, and the incubator session. If you've been, if you've ever had a thesis semester, that's kind of like that. It's kind of your whole MFA rolled into 1 year. And the accelerator begins with our one-day kickoff, with our weekend kickoff here in Baltimore at MICA, where we get together, we meet, we start our process, we begin developing work, we kind of understand each other as three-dimensional embodied people, and understand each other as makers. Can you see my mouse? You can see my mouse, right? Yeah. And so that's at the beginning, and then we move into the remote sessions, which are online on Zoom like this on a weekly basis, and we go fast and hard into a lot of concepts. We look at the idea of phase 0, which one of the students mentioned, which is where you begin thinking about the experience rather than the thing. About framing, we're going to look into we spend a good amount of time on world building, on narrative and interactive narrative. We look at, we think about empathy, we look at diagramming.
And I would chime in here that a lot of the sort of basically that February to mid or late March is really like the reading heavy period, and you're doing lots of quick, brief exercises, kind of like Margot in the video mentioned, to sort of implement and play around with the ideas.
So those projects are quick, and then we move into a collaborative project, which is your first portfolio project. You work in teams, you have a constrained brief, and you work with a preset, well, it's a constrained brief. You can push against the constraints a lot, and people do, and it's really exciting to see how people do that. And we put you in teams to kind of so that you can work across disciplines, because that's one of the main things that we're interested in here, is what happens is how powerful it is to work with people in other disciplines who are thinking about experience and can help you get out of the zone of best practices in your practice to think about that experience first. And then we have presentations of those, and we kind of take a breath, right? We've created these experiences. They're really intense. We take a breath, we look at what we've learned, and then we move on to the second session, which we coach you into, which is the lived research. And do you want to talk about the lived research a little bit?
Yeah, lived research is really fun. So we know that people have very different schedules and life sort of pacing changes in the summer. So we put folks into accountability pods where you meet a little bit less regularly. We don't have a weekly class. And it's an opportunity for you to essentially formulate some project that would be of interest to you. And that's kind of an on-ramp for that fall second portfolio project that's individually directed. And that lived research is really kind of magical. We've seen students do all different kinds of things. You can have like prototype development, you can do a lot of reading, conduct interviews, you can attend, we had a bunch of folks attend conferences, you can do more sort of traditional library-based research, and then you also have mentorship and sort of guidance from us. So we meet with you on and off throughout the summer. There are also office hours at that point.
And this is necessary because experience design is new, it's emergent, and it's ancient, but it's also new, right? There's no set of best practices. There isn't really a clear answer to what it is to design experiences in X field or Y field. All of us are innovating. And so to go out and do the lived research, you have to go out and actually figure out what is the experience of this thing? What can I learn about how to do it? Everybody's working in their own field. They have their own interests, and they need to kind of develop ways of working. And that's what the summer is. We coach you, and you have your accountability pods, but you're developing the field then, and that feeds into your next your final project.
I'll just give you a few examples of some of the projects that folks did because they're really kind of across the board. So we had one student who wanted to research a sort of intersection of the natural world, human consciousness, ketamine therapy. She was doing a lot of book-based learning in terms of the sciences, and then also some embodied components in these retreats. We had another student who is really interested in developing something, Christine, who you saw in the video, around animal shelters, thinking about shelters conceptually. So she volunteered at an animal shelter and is building a performance around and about that experience. So there was an embodied component of that as well. Margot Gray, who was also in the video, was researching games for social change and interested in the mechanics of game design that were specifically going to empower players and users to enact change and social good. So there's a real range, and you get people's real sense of their specific desires and interests. And this is a time, we also had a few folks who did really site-specific research, and they were interested in making more classic immersive installations. So this is a time for you to just sort of burrow into what's really going to make you tick.
Mm-hmm. So just wanted to show you the student portal. Everything we do is very well constrained. We don't use Canvas or anything like that. We have our own portal that offers everything, records our sessions, and has all of our reading material. And we send you the reading material. We'll give you a package of the reading material, and we'll save all the stuff you need. It's really easy to access here.
And just, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just and so we have the 2 retreats, and then we also have some optional things that pop up, like the Odyssey Works family reunion, which is a kind of get together. It's like if you've ever been to an unconference, it's like an unconference, and that starts actually Saturday. And so people get together there to kind of talk more informally, to build the community. This is open to people outside of the certificate program. But it's an opportunity to continue working on the community and to sort of develop ideas that weren't necessarily in the program. And then we move into the second session, which is where we are right now. So we've gone from what has been to what will be, and what we've done. And the second session is like the thesis semester, and that's that's essentially where you develop the project you've been thinking about, meditating on, which pushes forward the practice of experience design in your field. And some of those projects that people are working on are projects that happen, that are live, time-based experiences that happen at home or around the world. We've got one person working on a project about, just really an intense project about Muslim women who've lost children, and she's building a community and creating a forum for them. That's not something that's going to be like performed live, whereas other people are, we have people creating AR, augmented reality experiences that will be taken and presented live at our final weekend retreat. And also all through this fall session, we're doing workshops, we're giving feedback sessions, people are working with each other, giving each other feedback. And we're also looking forward at professional practice in the various fields. Do you want to talk about that elements of it, Aiden?
Yeah, so we start talking a little bit about writing your artist statement or designer sort of bio, something that can communicate what your vision is, what your mission is as a maker. You will also learn a little bit more about grant writing. We've had a number of students who've been very successful at getting funding both for this program to pay for it, and then also like Arts Council grants, things to support their projects, and additional sponsorship. And that's something that's really important to note that's new this year. So part of your tuition is A, paying for your books, and then B, it's also paying, it's creating an allotment of a budget for each of these portfolio projects. So for the first one, I believe it's $250, and then the final project, you have $500 to spend. And then we basically like pay that tuition back to you. And I think the the professional practice is really where we start thinking about where do you want to take this work that you've made, the lived research, the final portfolio project, and how do you want to be? So a lot of people come in and they're looking to make career pivots. And this is the time when we start having those conversations. Again, it's sort of through these artist bios, statements, thinking about how you might represent this, how you might think about financially structuring and supporting your work. Those all get folded in.
Yeah, a lot of people, I would say at least half the people in our cohort want to make career pivots, and most of the others want to change the way their workplace thinks about things and thinks about them and thinks about design. Like we have somebody from Meow Wolf, and he's like, people aren't really considering the experience. It's all experiential, but they're not considering the experience. I need to have a way of talking to them and a way of thinking about this that helps change that environment. We have people in universities, we have academics who are thinking about experience design as a way of designing curricula and wanting to change the way their departments work. We have like a department chair who's like, we can do this differently. And then a number of people who are pretty dissatisfied with marketing or theater careers that seem constrained by current best practices. So you develop this project in the fall, and then we have a final public presentation in New York, either of some live thing, of an object on presentation, or a report of an experience you created. And towards the end of that time, you're working with guest critics we've brought in. You can see them on the website. This year we're having Zach Morris, who's the founder of Third Rail Projects, immersive theater company. We have
Rachel Eve Ginsburg, who founded the innovation or the play lab at the Cooper Hewitt Museum. So she's really been also active in Columbia's digital storytelling lab, really on the forefront of interactive narrative. And then Allison Kobayashi, who developed Say Something Bunny,
which is a very successful, very interactive, experiential archive show. If any of you've seen it, you know what I mean.
Do you have that poster, Abe?
Yes. So
Okay.
then they come to our final presentation in New York, which is an open show. It's on Broadway actually this year. We don't know where it'll be next year, but you know, not like Times Square. It's like down by City Hall Park. But it's at Gibney Dance, if you know the place in New York, if you're from New York. And we also are inviting other experienced designers, artists, critics, writers whose work we respect, who have been influences on us, like Charlie Melcher, who founded Future of Storytelling, and several other people who are going to be there to look at the work, talk to people about their work, talk to people about their future, what they want to do, just get a lot of exposure and have a lot of really good conversations for our students. So that's happening if you're in New York on November 19th, as you can see. Watch
our students haven't even seen this poster. We just finished it today. So you're the first audience of this. Save the date. If you are in New York and you want to come, we'd love to see you there.
Yeah. So we want to give you, were you going to say something else about it?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between the two portfolio projects. So as Abraham mentioned, that first one is really going to be centered on collaboration. We give you, it's an exercise in adaptation. So this year we were adapting Little Snow White, the fairy tale from the original Brothers Grimm, which is much darker than the Snow White that many of us know from Disney. And so we took that text and in small groups of 3, folks were assigned to work through and make an interdisciplinary collaboration. So it's very small and focused experience. Usually I think it was about 8 weeks to develop. And we had a number of students who did various projects. This one was a 7-week mail-in cognitive cleanse. It was using
7 days. It was 7. Wasn't it 7 days?
Isn't that what I said? 7?
You said 7 weeks.
Oh, I meant
yeah.
7
Sorry. I was like, we didn't do it that long.
No. 7 weeks to develop, I think is what I meant. But so there were packets that everyone received in the mail who was participating that were prompts in order to think about, they were using the imagery of the mirror and the orchard to think about wellness, and also self-reflection of how do you perceive what is good about you and maybe what you want to improve. So riffing a little bit, quite loosely actually, on this idea of the mirror. Do you want to talk about Fairest Fair?
Fairest Fair was, this group developed a toxic workplace that we all got to get unpaid jobs in at this magazine called Fairest Fair, and we became part of the workforce there, and we were abused, but not in a really fun way. It was done on the what's this platform called again? GatherTown platform. And they built out this huge thing with all these Easter eggs. It was very much kind of an immersive theater piece. And we were all on teams developing content for Fairest Fair magazine until editor-in-chief Ingrid Regina stepped down from Fairest Fair in a toxic workplace scandal.
Built into the game were these things that would sort of help you seed a rebellion against that workplace culture that was so oppressive. And the idea was to sort of cultivate a resistance and shift things. And then there was a really thoughtful debrief to think about the actual experiences all the participants had in very real workplaces and how this might change their attitudes.
There was another one that was essentially an educational experience created between two rival DAOs, and
which is a cryptocurrency avenue, if you're not.
Yeah, it's like a crypto way of developing a community with an intention. It's something, I'd never heard of it before. I don't know how many of you have. This was how I learned about it. And they had these two sort of rival DAOs with these sort of voting systems, and it engaged us in a real world as an effort at finding an experiential mode of education that is both gamified and fun and educational. And so we learned all about these different DAOs as we played these sort of rival.
And you used real cryptocurrency, like a very small amount to play. And there was, we would use that cryptocurrency to vote on certain issues, and they were coaching us very much through. It was really meant to teach people and make this world that often feels like a subculture that a lot of people aren't part of and don't know how to be part of, something that is less scary and less intimidating.
And believe it or not, all these things actually were adaptations of Snow White. You have, for instance, here, the Evil Queen, and we had Snow White, and we had the dwarves, and they all kind of showed up, and we were sort of using this as a constraint to be able to explore these. I'll skip that one. In various different, there's all kinds of different possibilities for what people could create, and mysteries, explorations, one-on-one performance audio interactive performances, and people have done plenty of things like that. We couldn't show everything everybody's done. Then there's the second portfolio piece, and the second portfolio piece is a solo piece. And what we know is that solo pieces are harder and easier at the same time. But this is your work. This is like your thesis in it. So these would be large scale projects like the Book of Separation, which some of you may have done, which may involve other people helping you, may involve actors or sound designers, may involve technologists, but they're your projects. It's you're authoring them, and you have to complete it in the fall, right? And they should be innovating experience design in some way. We have something like the Madras Literary Society, which was an experience designed in Chennai, Madras, which was an adventure through the city, which worked with text messaging and audio. Something like Hold Please, which one of our students was commissioned to do for Tiny Island, is that what it's called? Tiny Island in New York, which was a telephone. Little Island.
Little Island.
Sorry, Little Island. I almost went there the other day, which is an audio phone tree experience designed for that space. Something like Neurodivergent, with which which a student created to offer neurotypical people an experience of being neuroatypical. And how does one do that? She herself was neurodivergent and had always had a challenge in trying to communicate these differences. Hayden, do you want to talk about the application?
Yeah, so now that you know the rough flow of how things go throughout the year, let's talk about applications and what will help you as you're working on that. So as we mentioned before, we're really looking for an application that's going to reflect your seriousness of purpose, your capabilities within your field, as well as just your capacity to think experientially and experimentally, I would say. So we're really aware that experience design isn't baked into a lot of fields at the moment, and we're working to change that. So we don't necessarily need you to be like, I am a capital E, capital D experience designer already. There are really only a few people out there that already have that in their job titles. You're of course welcome if that is your job title already. But we really, as we've emphasized over and over again, we want you to come from diverse worlds and backgrounds and communities. So be honest and be enthusiastic. Like, take a look over the website. You can see both the what is experience design section. If you have our book, you can review some of the 6 proposals within it. These are really going to tell you about the attitude and the ethos that we look for. And in our approach to making work, as the video emphasized, empathy is really at the core of this. We really value the people and who you are and how you show up. So show us what you've done already, and then tell us where you want to be going. Like, make it clear what you want to get out of this. In a way, we kind of want to see that narrative of like someone who's solid and understands who they are and what they want to be doing, and what they already have done. So show that you have a good work ethic, that you're enthusiastic, but that you're maybe going to think a little bit differently than what most people are, how they're approaching their work.
As you can tell from those interviews, there's a lot that's here about community. And so there's actually a question not shown here, which is about collaboration, and we will want a reference we can call. And you want to ask yourself, am I ready to jump into a world of people like this and really engage with them? And that's what we want. We want you to feel like that's where you want to go before you apply, and then tell us about it.
Yeah. So we have 2 kinds of scholarships. So we have 2 full scholarships that are from an incredibly amazing donor who sponsors 2 spots for BIPOC applicants. And then we also have 2 half scholarships for need-based support. All of these are incredibly competitive. Oh, and we have 1 work study position. And we offer them to the best overall applicants who qualify. So basically, to submit for the BIPOC application, there's no application for the BIPOC grant. You basically just need to check a box. That's it. We don't want to make you do extra work. For the need-based support, what we have you do is fill out basically like a self-evaluation, in terms of just being honest and transparent about what your sort of needs are. Let's see, the scholarships apply only to tuition is something that I wanted to remember. So in addition to tuition, people need to budget for travel and room and board for those 2 intensives, the one in Baltimore and the one in New York. We provided the lunches and snacks and 1 dinner during those weekend times. And everything else is sort of on you. We've had some folks who've coordinated to travel together via car or stay together. That's kind of up to you.
And we supply all the required reading materials.
Yeah. And the aforementioned budgets for your projects are included. So right. We also have had a number of students, I would say more than 1/3 of the people who are currently in the program have received professional development funds from their employers, some partial, some full. So we really encourage you to look into that if you work at a university or any educational institution. If you're working in the corporate world, a lot of times you have access to those funds. So start talking to your bosses or your higher ups or your colleagues and see if those are available to you, because they really do make a difference. And we want to do what we can to sort of create systems of support for everyone who's interested in participating. We've also had folks in the UK and in Canada receive arts funding grants to cover tuition, like I said, also to cover project grants. And we also have our own payment plan options that we offer to folks. So you can map out the year. We have a monthly plan and then a quarterly plan. And then some folks just pay the tuition all up front. So also, if you do have access to any of those additional outside funding sources through professional life or through Arts Council funding, we are happy to write letters of support or to describe and explain the program on your behalf if that will help you in securing those funds.
So our applications are due September 16th. And when are we're going to send out acceptances, rejections, and wait listings by late October. And then it's a quick turnaround. We're small. We like to keep it small. We don't like people to be kept waiting. We also ask you not to keep us waiting. And you'll have 1 week to confirm your enrollment. And if you don't want to, please let us know, and then we can move to somebody on the wait list pretty quickly. So last year we moved through this process fairly rapidly, which we feel is just respectful for everybody involved. And then people can start making plans. We have our first retreat. You can see that on the calendar in early February, or is it late January? It's either the end of January or the beginning of February, I forget.
First weekend in February, I believe that's February 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, first weekend of February. So if you're not in Baltimore, you can start making your plans to get here, get your Airbnb or get a hotel, and join the cohort. So last year, well, COVID is always an issue. Hopefully we're beyond the point where big plans get canceled. We've developed some pretty robust COVID safety planning. And we've learned a little bit about how to make sure people are okay and what to do with people who are not. And so there are things that are subject to change. But that's pretty much the plan. We have so if you do show up and you have COVID and you're left out and you can't join us, but we will find ways. We found ways last year to include people who were not able to make it because of COVID, and we will find ways again. And we're pretty strict about our COVID policies. Everybody needs to be vaccinated and tested before coming to our events. Who knows what the far future holds, but that's the plan right now. So this program has 3 main takeaways, and these are all the aims that we've had within our programs for the last 6 years. The first is transform your practice. We want you to walk away from our work inspired to make in an entirely new way. A portion of every of our sessions are dedicated to personal and professional practice to help you better understand how your work can create a sustainable creative practice. On top of that, we want the practice to be financially sustainable. And so we think about, we're going to work with you to help better understand how to create that sustainable practice. You'll learn about budgeting for projects, about writing artist statements, about grants, etc. The second, transforming your field. People come to us because they feel something is lacking in the way their practice works. We've worked with religious groups, with social good organizations, with cybersecurity teams, with immersive theater makers, with the Stanford D School, with Facebook and Apple, museum groups and artists, all of whom felt that the traditional ways that they were taught to practice their work no longer fit in the world we're in now. This program, which is intentionally outside the slow-moving behemoths of academia, it's intended to help you become the agents of change in those fields. The final aim of this program is to transform your life. Just as an experienced design supercharges a practice, it demands that the practice be focused on what is really meaningful to you. Some companies don't know exactly what experience design is, but they know that it's something they probably need. Companies like IDEO and Meow Wolf are now beginning to hire experienced designers. That might be expected, but now we are also seeing architecture firms, academia, immersive theater companies, social designers, all of them engage, religious organizations, nonprofits engaging experience design as an incredibly powerful tool to transform the way they work and make it more effective.
So this program is really aimed at giving you some technical chops, kind of a la a boot camp program like General Assembly, or it's a little bit longer than, say, a coding boot camp. It also is aiming to give you the conceptual chops of an MFA program and a community of like-minded designers, plus that handy dandy certificate that you can show employers and that will sort of validate and solidify your expertise within a kind of emergent field that not a lot of people know and understand yet. And over the past 20 years of our research developing these pioneering methods, we've really codified an approach to experience design and led the public conversation on what that practice can be. So in that time, we've built this community of people, the folks who are coming to our family reunion this weekend, who are changing the way that their fields work. And this certificate really represents that to employers and to collaborators. So it's a way to indicate on your resume that your work carries a level of formal rigor that's paired with an empathetic ethos that's really devoted to centering an audience's experience. So really, when people hear about Odyssey Works and the work we do, those are the two things that go hand in hand. This rigor paired with a real human-centered approach. And in the process of developing this program, we really designed something that we would have liked to have ourselves. So we spoke to people that were leaders at major companies, organizations, and conferences about what they wanted to see in the field. And they all expressed that vision as also what they're looking for, which is why we're so pleased to have offered it this year and to be continuing the program into next year. It's been really, really kind of remarkable to see the work that students have come up with. I hope you've felt that way too, seeing some of what we've shared today. So if anyone has questions, we're now open and available for them. If you want to chime in the chat, I know some people are having to leave after an hour. It looks like Janae. Okay, Janae, you have a question. Do you have anything else you'd advise someone to add to their experience bank pre-applying? You feel you're probably not quite ready this year, but want to work towards this over the next year. Do you want to go into more detail, Janae?
It's Janae here.
About what you feel like you're not sure you have yet for the application?
Maybe not.
We'll circle back to that. I do think that generally showing that you have produced some work on your own or with other people really helps. So having, a portfolio of projects that you have made, they don't have to be huge. They don't have to be Odysseys or Odyssey Works scales, but we want to see that you've participated in making things and making things with other people. And generally, if you want to chime in with more information, then let me know.
Don't say no to yourself. Let us say no, right? Why say no to yourself right away? We have a couple questions. Dan was first on.
Yeah.
So you've talked about accessibility and you've mentioned the fact that you've had a neurodiverse student in the past, but obviously you have these events that are in person that are a part of this curriculum. So how is accessibility not just on a mental level, but also on a physical level in these venues, or if that's a thought process that you think of or that you pick post picking students? And how would one go about that process, especially in the sense that I am someone who is disabled, and accessibility is really important to me in terms of I'm not going to apply to something that I can't physically go to. And so I've been really grateful for your COVID policies and stuff, but I'm wondering a little bit more about accessibility in other ways.
Yeah, so Micah is an accessible building in terms of, I don't know the specifics of your needs, but we also have, we talk to our students, and it's something that's great to have a conversation with up front. I've taught disability studies in the past, and so we really want to know the specifics of what particular students need, but the venues that we're using are all wheelchair accessible, and we're happy to sort of talk about other access needs or particulars, whether that means having, you know, schedules or shifting deadlines. We've worked with a lot of students on that. Abe, is there anything you'd want to add on that?
I mean, the nice thing about, we have a pretty small cohort. Nice thing about that is we work with everyone on their needs, and we can work with anyone there. We have our limits. There's travel, it's sort of built in, so you'd have to be able to get to the 2 different venues. Most of it is on Zoom, so that is as accessible as it can be. But then it's personal. Then we're in community. Then our aim is to support each other and to work with you. We like to develop a plan with people at the beginning of the program to provide accommodations that we're able to provide, so that we can start out with everything that we need in order to move forward. But then we keep checking in and we make sure that we're in good shape with all of our students. It's, you know, the main thing is that we're in community. We only have these 2 in-person things. The family reunion is kind of an optional add-on, and they are at accessible locations. But we're working in community, and we want to be supporting each other. And so there's the official ways that one manages such things, such as accessibility letters and accommodation letters and conversations, which we want to do at the beginning. But then there's the ongoing effort to create a supportive community, which we can do when we have such a small group. We're not some add-on to a college, right? We are here to support each other, and we all have different ways of working. So we have long conversations with everybody about their needs. I think Denise Shante was next.
Could I ask a question?
Hold on, we've got 3 hands raised if you want to do that, or you can type it into the chat. Denise Shante?
Yeah, thank you. I've been listening to like the words being used as you are talking about the program, and hearing like intense and fast and hard, and understand all of that. So I'm curious, like outside of this grind, hustle, academic kind of culture, how are you all going to be different in this program? Like, what are the spaces and opportunities for care and being able to work differently through the process? I want to hear more about that.
So we have a sort of like baseline expectation, which is that this takes you about 10 hours a week. So a lot different than the rigors of a graduate level program, where you're basically expected to be working 40 or more hours a week on top of teaching on your study. So really 10 hours a week. That does fluctuate, right? So when you're working on a project, that might change, but that includes in-class time, and then also reading when we're doing the more theory heavy section. We have, you know, life just happens when you are doing a certificate program. We've had students go through a whole gamut of, you know, family illness and death, professional lives that get an increased project load or things like that. We've been pretty flexible with folks on deadlines. We really have just sort of like shifted, and that's again the great thing about a smaller program, is that we can sort of shape shift based on our students' needs and be really responsive to them. You know, we encourage open communication from students to be clear and upfront with us about those needs changing. So someone over the summer had a family emergency and live research got kind of derailed, and that's okay. They're more or less like a month late. We had another student that for accessibility reasons couldn't turn on in projects on time. That's okay. We try and keep you staying the course. Our goal is for you to complete the certificate within a year. But we do try and really create a compassionate and human-centered space where you're not like a cog in an academic machine. We're not really interested in that. And both of us have worked in academia for a long time.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add to that is, it's fast and we have a short time together. But in my experience in places that are sort of burnout kind of situations, it's because you're kind of alone and you're kind of having to produce stuff for somebody else, and there's a competitive nature to it, and all of these things that add a sort of layer of stress and competitiveness. And we've designed this program around the notion that it is a community supporting each other, both in these kind of collaborative projects, but also in lived research and in the projects in the fall. People work in pods, and those pods are supportive. Those are support pods, right? They're there to help people with what they need, or just to keep the community together as you go through this process. Our aim is for you to make your best work, for you to make the work that you're happiest about. And having worked in academia for 13 years now, I know that oftentimes people are sort of pushed into a kind of a form-making machine that's trying to squeeze you into something you're not, and that's incredibly stressful. Our aim is for you to be squeezing yourself into what you want to be. There's energy there and support, and if rhythms change, if self-care is necessary, it generally is supported by the fact that you're making what you wish to be making. This is the theory that underlies the idea, the notion that we can have a really intense program at the same time as one that is not harmful, right? That's our goal. I forget who was next, Divya or Marlo, but I'll say Divya.
Hi. My question was, I had been part of your experience design semester at MICA. So how different is this certificate program from that semester curriculum?
Well, it's great to see you again, Divya.
Good to see you.
Always, of course. Well, how should I put it? You were in a class with grad students and undergrads, and this is a program with working professionals who know they only have a year, and they're on it. They're often paying for it themselves. There's like the culture of it is totally different, because nobody's learning anything from scratch. People are coming with their practices to the table. Everybody's working at a pretty high level, and so nobody's kind of having to learn these kind of basics, right? And people are driving themselves. Nobody's driven by homework assignments or the fear of grades. It's not even part of it. So some of the basic material is the same, but we go much deeper in this year. We go much deeper. Things we only touched on in that class, that was kind of like an introduction, we go really deep. And it's much more interdisciplinary. People are coming from a far broader set of disciplines, because it's not, we're in an art school, right? Yeah. So, and there's more, but look over some of the look over the students who are in the program. We have that. Listen, you'll get a sense.
Okay.
Yeah, Marlo.
Jen, were you going to say something? Oh, maybe not. I thought she had taken off her mute. Anyway, the question I have, first of all, I appreciate a lot of conversation that you've had around the logistics and what you've learned in putting this program together over this time. I am very curious, though, about your experience around creating this experience. So can you tell me a little bit about that, like what you've learned, not so much like from a practical, just tactical level, but from your experience of creating this experience, what have you learned thus far?
Sorry, I was typing a response to John. Can you jump in?
Oh, I'll jump in. Yeah. Marlo, so much. This is our dream program. Right. And like Denise Shantae's question was really central. It wasn't the exact question that we had. But the question that we had was, how can we create an environment where we are learning something that is emergent, where everybody is in community, where it's not a kind of didactic top-down, this is what you need to know, here's a pile of information. How can we create an environment where people's motivations are all personal, where nobody is there, where it's not about pleasing us, where it's actually about creating what is best for you because you feel the support of the community. I was just talking to a student, because I do teach at MICA, and I teach the graduate graphic design graduate MFA studio. I was talking to a student, she's saying, oh, I'm so afraid to do anything. I'm afraid to, I have such fear of the competition, and I'm so afraid to speak up. And we were talking for a while, and she's like, oh yeah, I would speak up all the time if I felt I was in an environment where my learning was what everybody else wanted, rather than that. And so we were focused on this. We were focused on the power of the community to do that. And so we, and so we went out, we did all this research. We explored lots of different programs that are out there. We talked to a lot of people, and did a bunch of interviews. And we also looked at the finances. There's a whole element of this, which was like, higher ed is crazy. What should we be offering? Our first thought was, let's do an MFA in experience design. And we quickly realized that it's not what we wanted to make more of. We wanted to make something that really respected people in their lives. And that, that's been really interesting. We have everybody is a working professional in the program. And relating to it's been such an interesting experience relating to people as they're trying to put these ideas into action in their work in real time, which is so exciting. I don't know if that totally answers your question, but I could go on and on.
It does, thank you.
I think Arena.
I'll just tag on. So we had a question from John, which I mostly answered in the chat, but about being a sex ed teacher, what the capacity and comfort in the program and community for content that's explicit about sex and sexuality is, and what to tell a public health boss to encourage them to use staff time for this. So I mentioned this in the chat, but we have one person whose research interests are really focused around sex and intimacy currently. And we also have had a number of other folks within the program. I myself think a lot about consent and intimacy in an experiential capacity. So we have conversations around that. I think as far as your boss, I would also say that the people who come to us are really open-minded. They are really comfortable talking about gender and sexuality. That's one of the great things about running a sort of adult ed program. We're not sort of hamstrung in the way that universities are in that. And I would say, as far as the boss and what to sort of say, like, that really this can change the way that you as an educator are going to approach this. We get so many teachers who come through our programs, and I think that education is inherently experience design, almost like in a more easily and immediately translatable way. Every day you're designing the experience of your students. You're moving them through different phases of learning and receptivity. And I think that teachers and educators come in and they're really comfortable around what it is to think about audience first. Most people aren't coming in and being like, man, I'm really a hardcore lecturer, right? So telling your boss that this might be a way to elevate and sort of shift the conversation around sexuality in a more lived and experiential way. You know, I think a lot of sex ed can be kind of flat. In my experience, it's really didactic around information and STIs. And so this is like a way for you to say, hey, let's like open up and create space and design space that's safe to have conversations and more experiential approaches to that. I don't know if that answers your question or if there's more to that, John.
I'll think if there's more, but other people should keep asking questions because that was an extremely pointed question for me personally.
No worries. Irina, I think you had a question also.
Yeah, we had a couple, but one we will just email to you. It's very specific. Another question is in terms of the sessions, are there any guest artists who come to lead the sessions, or is it the two of you, or a combination, and so on? Thank you.
So we lead most. Oh, sorry. Okay. So the vast majority of the sessions, it's just us. At the end, we have guest critics who come in, and those are the ones we mentioned before. They're listed. If you look under instructors, you'll see the guest critics for this year. They may not be the guest critics for next year, but they're who we have for this year. And those are people who will both come to sessions, give people feedback, and come to the final presentation in New York in November and give further feedback. And we also have other guests who come to that, who are specifically invited, honored guests, we call them, to come and give people real-time feedback from around their work and just have conversations with them about it. I will say that the people who it'll be next year may not be the same as this year. Most programs work this way because of scheduling and all that, but also because we thought about this particular trio of guests. We invited them because of what we knew about our cohort and what their needs were. And so our guests are bound to change to reflect that. In our original design, we had a lot more guests coming in, but we find that I find in teaching in academia, it can disrupt a flow. So we bring them in with really specific intention to do these feedback sessions so that people get outside feedback. Our focus is, until then, is really on the community. That said, your lived research over the summer is something that is pretty minutely designed. And much of that, for a lot of people, involves going and working with people whose work has inspired them, who they want to learn from, i.e. not exactly an internship, but they do interviews, they collaborate, and they could have internships. And we help people to find those people if they need to, because we have a pretty good network now of folks who think about things the way we do. What is visual echo?
That's a complicated question. It's our company, and we will email you about this. But we started the company as a duo. We come from very different backgrounds, but started creating work together. So by looking at your training as a way for us to take it together. But we will email about that.
Great. Great.
Fantastic. So we're almost at the end of our hour and a half. Are there any final questions from folks that are lingering? Things you want to know? Pressing final questions.
If you remember from last year, what was your favorite question that someone asked that was extremely clever to have asked?
Oh, what was it?
I'm not sure I remember, to be frank.
It feels like so long ago, John. It feels like so long ago. One thing I'll say is a lot of people who come to our programs, they come because they've been thinking in a certain way, trying to work in a certain way, and they feel kind of alone. And they know that there's other people thinking this way and trying to develop work in this way. And so moving forward, starting this weekend with the family reunion, we are working with our students and working with each other and our community to build this community into a much larger network of people who support each other and who inspire each other. So this family reunion is part of that, and that was for anybody who came to any of our programs, but we're going to keep building on that. We're early on yet. Seraphine.
Hi, I have two questions. I'm really curious about how you experience designed the cohort number. Like why 10, why 20? Like how did you come upon the number? And the other question is, how do you and Aidan, like I was just putting myself in your shoes and thinking about what it must be like to be you guys and to look after all these people in a program. How do you and Aidan get support or feel supported so that you can bring yourselves to be able to do what you do? Because if we're going to be leaning on you, then we need to know that you're leaning on someone behind you.
That's that Superman scene, right? What was the original Superman when he's like he catches Lois Lane in the air and she says, you know, he says, "I've got you," and she says, "Who's got you?" I just think about that one with that. Well, we have each other too.
Yeah, we truly almost every week when we talk and have meetings, it's like really nice to be co-teaching. So that number I would say is also designed around our capacities as co-teachers. So in previous programs, we've done groups of 15 and groups of 10 and found that, first of all, just fundamentally, we want to know everyone's name in the room and we don't want to struggle to remember who you are. So we're not going to go over 15. This year, you know, we've been playing with like numbers that break into certain segments, right? Like 15 divides really well into groups of 3, groups of 5. Discussions can happen, small collaborations. We're going to try 10 to keep folks even more intimate, though it's really, we're picking people and making size more based around who we think is going to work well together. We're not set on filling 15 slots per se, or set on filling 2 sets of 10. This is just like the capacities that we're thinking about in terms of creating intimate groups where everyone knows each other and feels supported by each other. And can feel like they have a complementary set of interests and skill sets that are going to challenge them and expand their worldview, expand their professional and creative practice. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question in terms
about
of
who supports us. Yeah, come over, we'll have coffee. Our students have been so, our students are grown-ups and many of them are really caring people. And so, as we've kind of developed these programs, we've found them to be incredibly supportive. We're not sitting on high in this program, looking down on everyone. And that's a really important design for us. Yes, we are supporting a lot of people, but also the whole purpose of building this as a community, as opposed in a circle, as opposed to in a triangle with us sitting up at the top, is that they support each other too.
And we also have an advisory board that we meet with, and that sort of helps advise us in terms of structuring. So we've talked through with them on both like the program before we developed it. We've talked about that. We talked to them last week, actually, or earlier this week. I don't know what day of the week it is. We spoke with them very recently. We talked through sort of how we might shift some of the formatting. They're professionals in a wide variety of fields themselves, so they're able to think about it from a lot of different perspectives.
But I'll also say, like, I teach in a graduate program, and it's nice, and there's like academic systems of support for everybody, and that's nice. And we just have us and some people that we hire to do a few things. And a work study person, but the power of like the fact that this is our dream program, we have that passion is the same as what we hope for our students. It is so supportive. It's so energizing, right? You don't need support because you're doing some dumb job, right? Like we looked everywhere. There's nobody doing this. There's no place to do this. There's one program that we love that we think is really cool in Miami University of Ohio. It's a 3-year MFA, but it's a 3-year MFA. And that's a whole different kind of commitment. We really respect them, but in general, nobody's doing this. Everything that says experience design is doing, well, you probably looked into it, some kind of immersive theater stuff or some kind of marketing thing, right? There's nobody doing this. It's so exciting to be here.
Thanks for all of your questions, everyone. It has been such a pleasure to speak with all of you. I know that Irina and Dish had also asked about sending more direct questions to us. So if you'd like to, you can email both of us, one or both of us. I'll put our emails in the chat again. If you have other more specific follow-ups, we are totally happy to talk with you. If you want to talk with some students, we can also put you in touch. Some of you may already know them, but we're here to answer your questions as the application deadline approaches. You've got about a couple weeks. And if there are other folks that are in your communities that you want to fold into this, that might be amazing classmates and comrades in experiential design, like bring them our way. We really feel like community is the sort of like network, the sort of like rhizomatic outreach that we want. We're less interested in like, finding people that are more distant from us. Oftentimes those real personal connections are the ones that really matter the most to us. So it's been a real pleasure to get to know some of you all tonight and hear your curiosity, your excitement, the ways you're pushing back in the world. Thank you for being here.